two big networks that we can't refer to. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to be zapped from the stage or something like that. Is there a penalty, Morgan, if we actually use those words?
You don't get your beer later.
Don't
today.
get my beer lately. All right. So First Bank of Toronto is how you refer to those two unnamed large ones. And so with that, let's go ahead, and I'm just going to have the panel members, and Chris is madly writing down a new version of FB&T, I guess. So let's just go right on down, Chris, and tell us who you are and what you do, and then we'll come back and dive in after that.
Super, thanks. I'm Chris Baggett. I was one of the original co-founders of ExactTarget. About 5 years ago, shockingly enough, I realized that in email we have a content problem, and I went off and started Compendium, which is essentially a content marketing platform, enabling us to get a central view of content distributed across all the internet marketing channels, as well as print. I'm also a farmer.
My name is Andrea Grant, and I work for Crocs Shoes. We're a billion-dollar company, a global manufacturer and retailer operating in 40-some countries around the world. And I'm sure all of you know us from our molded yellow or orange clogs. But we do have over 450 different other silhouettes, one of which I'm wearing today. And I've been with Crocs for a little under 4 years, and I am responsible for our global CRM, campaign management, specifically email, and our loyalty programs.
My name is Staten Hansen from Microsoft, on particularly the Bing and MSN email marketing channels. I think all of you know Bing, or the other search engine, continuing to gain share in the US and globally.
Is that like the other white meat?
The better way, yeah, exactly.
Hi, I'm Paula Wang. I'm with Cisco Systems. I run a team that basically takes care of what we call marketing platforms, which is actually pretty comprehensive. It includes both digital, / social, / online, and the offline piece, which is events. So Cisco is a 100% B2B company now. I think what some of the ideas I may share may differ from some of the previous B2C folks. I'm very excited about being here. So as we are in this emerging space, I'm sure we can learn a lot from each other.
Okay, great. Thanks, panel members. So I'm going to start off with a little background and then pass it back to the panelists with sort of a two-part question. I thought first we should probably start with ground in what the hell are we talking about when we're talking about integrating social and email. So the way I think about it is in sort of 5 different camps or buckets. The first being, remember way back when in 2008 with the launch of share to social or share with your network, right? You'd slap some buttons in your emails, send out the email and cross your fingers that hope that a few people would click on that email and share that or click on that button and share the content out into one of their networks. The second thing that probably sort of followed that was using social channels for email acquisition, like putting an email opt-in form on your Facebook page or, oops, on your FB&T page, oops. I don't get an exception. I make the rules, and I don't get to break my own rules. All right. On your first Bank of Toronto page, right? The third one being, just sort of, and some things that Chris will probably talk a bit about is the idea of just making your emails more social, right? By pulling in social content into your emails, whether it's conversations or customer reviews and feedback and testimonials and things like that, or actually live tweets, things like that. The fourth being, social sign-in, social login, right? Giving people the ability to use their social network identity to register and engage with you. And the fifth one, the one that people like David Baker and others, and I know Andrea at Crocs, we were talking a little bit briefly about this, that they're starting to look down the road of the dream of social CRM. So with that setup, what I'd like you to do, and I guess I'll start it, we'll go back and we'll crisscross. We'll start with Paula on the other end. Two-part questions. One, with that sort of setup, tell us how Cisco thinks about social and email, and if you agree with kind of how I laid it out, do you focus on a couple of those, and then maybe share some examples of how you are integrating the two channels?
Sure. I think that's a very valid question. The context for Cisco is, again, we're 100% B2B. So our emails typically are not for direct sales, as you know what some of the panelists were talking about previously. So from an integration perspective, we only integrate where it makes sense. I don't think there is much value in integrate everything for integration's sake. But from a social, online, email, and event integration perspective, we take the approach of always focusing on the customers. First thing we do is always figure out our target audience, where they are congregating. Are they on different forums, online communities? Are they on the bank you were talking about, or are they on other places like Pinterest, LinkedIn, Google+, and WeChat or Weibo in the case of China. So several things we do. One is we definitely offer or make it easy for people to share content, especially infographics and motion graphics. If you guys are online, you go to share.cisco.com, you will see on the upper right-hand side, there's a long list of places where you can export the content to. So interestingly enough, Pinterest has been a major traffic driver for us for some of our branding campaign effort. So infographics definitely is a very relevant content piece or content format or form factor for Pinterest. The second piece for Cisco is thankfully we have a CMO, Blair Christie, who is very socially aware and also who is a major advocate for social. She's just been nominated as one of the top 20 social CMOs by, I guess it's Forbes magazine. So with that as our background, we try to be present and where it makes sense. So if you go to any of the emerging social networks, we are there at the brand level. And because how big we are as a company, there's a lot of innovation going on. Oftentimes, you will also see small groups represented on those platforms. So presence everywhere if possible. So the third piece is we encourage experiments, pilots. So we've done Google Hangouts quite a few times. Some of the vertical teams. We've certainly been testing a few things on Pinterest, which is the image uploading platform. So in the coming CES in January, the Consumer Electronics Show, even though we're B2B, we will be there. We will have a contest launched specifically on Pinterest, encouraging people to share their experience visually on Pinterest. So just to sum it up, we integrate where it makes sense. We try to be prevalent and omnipresent where our customers are. We encourage innovation and pilots. So at this point, some of the emerging networks, we definitely we're very open to test and embrace. And budget-wise, it's relatively small, so we can afford to make some mistakes, which is a good thing.
Yeah, at a very high level, obviously Microsoft has its hands in just about everything. But from the Bing and MSN channels, from which I own, when you look at MSN in particular, the editors all own their own social channels. So they have their own Twitter fans and Facebook fans. But from a Pinterest standpoint, they're on there. And for certain brands, there's a lot more relevance, obviously for like lifestyle, home and garden, those kinds of things. You'll see a lot more activity on those particular channels. But from the Bing perspective, the email channel has actually really taken more of a lead in generating its own content to be relevant. And so we have a lot of access, of course, to data and what people are searching, what types of categories they're interested in, what type of top searched movies or other types of things. And so we try to bring that more to light in, like Paula was talking about, infographics, and creating something that's interesting and unique and try to break through with our target audience. And really the way we use email is really, social from email's perspective is really kind of as a complement to our engagement strategy. So what can we do to continue the conversation with the users and to drive them to engage with the brand beyond just one click? So how do we get them to go, to the site and to discover? If you look at, Bing.com, it's really not just a search box, right? It's really beautiful imagery. It's got a lot of discovery within the channel, and so we try to bring that to life more within the actual emails itself, and make something kind of interesting for them to explore, and really reach out to like the more info seekers and connected socializers within our channels. So that's how we look at it.
Well, just a quick, so are you saying you're using some of the social engagement to target those people with email? Is that what you're saying? Or?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Just on your last point, were you saying that you're pulling in some of their social behaviors into then communicating back to them?
No, we don't. We have somewhat limited data to access what people are actually doing on the social channels. We try to look at what they're doing on the site. So really looking at more of the behavior, cutting that by male and female, their age groups, and then really building out a broad swath of content and creative, and using real-time, a real-time platform to optimize creative for different users in different segments. So that's how we're using it. Yeah.
Big rats up here in New York City, I guess.
Sorry, Loren, can I?
Yeah.
I realized that. By the way, I am having the altitude sickness, so I'm not. I'm having a slight headache here, but I did realize I missed one of the questions.
The email
social piece. We actually are experimenting with the opposite to what Loren was saying, because you were saying basically using social to acquire email addresses. We're putting a lot of effort in doing the opposite, which is to basically using email to get people to provide their social ID to us, so we can link that back to our CRM database. So essentially, we wanted to enrich the contact, the profile of our customer contacts.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Oh, good. I was going to say someone bring her some water. So, thank you. So Crocs is a very metric-driven company. Like I mentioned, our origin is a manufacturer. So think about adding on like cycle time and first pass yield onto your email KPIs. It's very interesting. But social has always been more or less a stepchild in terms of the marketing tactics because of that reason. It lacked a lot of metrics. But over the last year and a half, we've been placing a large emphasis on our customer, which isn't rocket science, but it is a shift in terms of mentality at Crocs. So we've started a customer engagement department, and they're responsible for monitoring all the various social channels, marketing channels, and understanding our customers' perspective on the brand. And we are also now very much direct-to-consumer, the omni-channel model. So retail and online and marketing are all one, working together collaboratively. So our social department and our email department, even our mobile and online, we work together developing various types of content calendars. To Paula's point, so we originally used our social channel to acquire new customers into our email channel, but it's vice versa. It works both ways. And again, it's enriching data. And we have just gone through a full site redesign, and we're leveraging Gigia for social sign-on to acquire that information. And to the content point, I don't know if there's other brands in the room that always struggle with content. We were talking about insurance, but for some reason we always struggle developing content. So pulling off various types of customer comments, whether they be on a social channel or through our Bazaar voice, and placing them within our email to give us content. We do see that there's a lift in terms of email clicks and conversions when their network, and there's comments from their network within an email. But I do think there's opportunity to optimize those various types of channels as well. So bringing in people specifically within your network, maybe their profile pictures or something within the email that kind of resonates with consumers immediately. Let's see. And it's also humanizing the brand as well. So I'm also speaking on behalf of my social team. So bear with me. But just to humanize Crocs a little bit more, that we're not a large manufacturer where we are. We do develop footwear for various types of lifestyles and wearing occasions.
Super. So we're a B2B marketer as well, but I think what I'm going to talk about more is some of how our clients are actually doing this. And email plays so well into social, and I think it's a big missed opportunity. People want to talk about themselves, and they actually want to share content about themselves, not you. And email is the easiest, fastest, best way, cheapest, did I say that, to get people to give you content. We have an optical company we work with that simply every time they have a new customer, they say, I need an email, take a picture of yourself with glasses and send it back to us and tell them how you like it or where you wore them or what you're doing or why you bought them or all kinds of goofy questions. And they get these in by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Immediately trigger a following email back out saying, hey, because they put that all out onto their search pages. And then they trigger an email back out saying, hey, we just featured you on our site. Share it. And they have all the major sharing buttons there, including the First Bank of Toronto sharing buttons. And in a very, very short period of time, Caleb, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's a little over 30% of all of their inbound traffic is coming from the First Bank. And it's coming through people who are seeing stories about their friends, and then they're saying, hey, guess what? I wear glasses too. If Loren thinks this is a good place and he's cool, I'm going to start getting my glasses there. That's just email and social. It's just a marriage made in heaven.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks. Before I move on, is anybody brave enough to share any really cool things that they're doing by integrating social and email? See, that just proves how difficult it was to get this panel together. Nobody has anything else interesting to add. All right. Well,
just stimulating the thought for the next break in the action, because there'll be lots of people who want to share those ideas.
All right. So one of the things, obviously, we're not talking about the First Bank of Toronto, but Pinterest was thrown out. Pinterest, as most of you know, is the latest hot thing in the industry, and Instagram and Foursquare and everything like that. But I see that as particularly the success that Pinterest is having is a sign of the challenge that all of us in this room as brand marketers are going to have to deal with, which is there's probably going to be 2 new social channels, or however you want to refer to them, that are going to be emerging probably every 6 to 12 months, right? And so the question of the panel is how does your company think about which of these emerging new channels do we actually worry about, focus on, invest in and stuff, right? Because some of them only have 5-10 million users, but Pinterest had 10 million about 6-9 months ago. I think it's up to 25 million now. It has a very retail. A lot of retailers are saying that it's their 3rd or 4th highest source of traffic. I think Paula, you said it's one of the highest drivers of traffic for Cisco and for certain type of infographics and stuff. And I guess Chris, we'll go back the other way and maybe start with you if you have any thoughts on how your clients are dealing with this. But so how do you think about applying resources to, while we're up on stage here, there's a new network that's going to emerge. How would you address that?
So like a lot of us, I think we focused on the biggest, right? I mean, all of these take a lot of energy. Some are as little energy as just add another button, and that's all fine. But at the end of the day, I think Seth Godin said this the other day, we're a decade into email marketing. We don't quite have this down right, So we really try and focus and get our clients to focus on the big things. We didn't talk about search engines, but search engines are becoming more and more social every day. Google's been introducing something called author rank. How many people know what author rank is? Yeah, exactly. Author rank is basically all kinds of social signals around the author of a piece of content. So let's say you get your customer to write a blog post about how great they love Crocs, and I'm typing in their nearest Crocs dealer. If one of my friends has content around that, good chance that content is going to surface, right? So those social signals are greatly influencing search, which of course is the biggest game in town besides email.
So at Crocs, we focus on the big 3, so First Bank of Toronto and Pinterest. But I think there are definitely some emerging technologies, and I would even argue that Needle is considered a social tool, even though it's also chat. But there are social capabilities. But really, we're focusing on integrating first, and then expanding our footprint. So, big brands always have huge IT backlogs. So we too struggle with the same. And so it's really integrating and understanding who the customer is before we reach out and expand our footprint.
For us, it's First Bank of Toronto, obviously. Pinterest and Tumblr are the primaries. But the focus for our social team for Bing and MSN is primarily the former of the two. I really just don't think Pinterest or Tumblr and some of these other new social networks are really for everyone. I think it really just comes down to really evaluating your brand. Do you have a story to tell? And then really from the email marketing perspective, what are your principles for engagement? For us, it was we have a visual story to tell. We have interesting data, and we can make a story about it. And then obviously go out and test it and just see what kind of reaction do we get from users? Can we get critical mass? What are the other opportunities? And so really we're kind of in a testing phase right now, still just with Tumblr and with Pinterest, really understanding what kind of impact we can have there and how else we can leverage and utilize them.
Yeah, at this point for us, obviously the two are tier 1, and below that we're seeing huge growth from LinkedIn and YouTube. LinkedIn is a great platform for B2B marketers because it's very targeted. The platform basically knows a lot about these people, the members, right? Their titles, their industry, their level, their potential decision-making ability. So our growth on LinkedIn has been in the 3 digits in the past couple of quarters. So it's very fast, and we have over 1,500 accounts / groups there to address different pain points our customers may have. And following LinkedIn and YouTube is because we have in the B2B space, thought leadership content is very essential. You want to position your company as a visionary and thought leader in the space, right? So a lot of the content is not about your products or services necessarily. It's more about how you look into the future, maybe 20 years, 30 years down the road, right? So those are YouTube with all the video content, great place for us to convey and that message and establish our thought leadership position there. Following that, we call that as tier 2, the next one would be Google+. Mostly for the search aspect of it, right? So we have quite a few, I don't know how you call the groups. Accounts or groups there. We do that primarily in the hopes of getting picked up by the search engine. So that there's an inherent value in using Google+. I guess they just need to do I don't know if there's any Google people here, but they just need to do a better job with the platform itself. The next ones are very niche, potentially specific targeted group focused, Pinterest being one. Because currently I focus a lot on Asia Pacific, I do want to bring to your attention that Weibo in China actually has a lot more members than either one of those bank members. so we invest a lot in the Sina Weibo space in China. Speaking of content, just so it's an extension of the topic here of how we go about evaluating these platforms. First of all, we are not overwhelmed per se by the proliferation and emergence of different platforms. I think that's a great thing to see innovation popping up everywhere in the globe. Secondly, given the resource constraints, we do take more of a methodical / experimental approach towards evaluating all these platforms. So hence the tiering, which is an outcome, not a initiation point per se. From a content perspective, we believe for any content to be relevant, it has to address a pain point, right? Either the what, or the one, or the where piece that the customers care about. to convey the same or to achieve the same type of effect, the gist of content may be consistent, but the form factor may differ by channel, right? So the same idea, we try to concentrate on one or two major ideas. I will give you one specific example. We just launched our new brand campaign called the Internet of Everything. People may have heard of Internet of Things. Now we have the Internet of Everything, meaning basically more than 99% of the globe is not connected to the internet today. Things or processes or people or data. So that core idea is now being represented by different content pieces in different channels. We have infographics and motion graphics. I don't know how many of you use it. It's I think one of the online magazine had a Mona Lisa, painting. It's a motion graphic. You can drag the screen. You see the real painting and the painting that that's beneath it. So anyways, we have the infographics and motion graphics for image-friendly platforms like Pinterest, like I guess Twitter now is out because they no longer allow Instagram to it's no longer integrated with Instagram. We also have very shortened video, short form video formats for video sharing, YouTube or Youku or any other places. And certainly, blogging is still very relevant in the B2B space. Our futurist Dave Evans actually has been maintaining a blog. So all these content pieces, they may appear to be text, images or storytelling or interactive pieces or videos. At the end of the day, they all represent this one core idea, the Internet of Everything. That what it means, and then what role Cisco plays in that whole idea. So that's kind of how we approach this. Essentially, we have a business imperative or a priority, and then we come out of that. We have a marketing piece, and then we develop relevant content. So the realization is previously it was all about campaign, which means there's a fixed beginning and ending of a certain effort. Now it's always on. It's 24/7. It presents both the opportunities and challenges for us. So we need to sometimes course correct very quickly. So anyways, that's a very long-winded way to, for me to share with you where we are as a company in, integrating all the different pieces. And email is very essential for us. We do, I know this is mostly an email crowd. We do a lot of events in the B2B space because, lots of our product need to be, demo is important, and we also need the CXOs of our customers to talk to our executives real time. The way we drive attendance is via social, is via email. And we also, all the events, we have the customer feedback form. On the form, we literally ask these guys, what's your social ID? So that's also, that's kind of how organically we integrate all the different marketing tactics. At the end of the day is to build a more 360 degree type of contact profile.
Okay,
so we can better engage with them going forward.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks, Paula. So I want to actually follow up on kind of part of what you're talking about. One of the things that I think is interesting that we're seeing in sort of the next wave of social channels is I think a lot of them were very sort of text-based, right? That a lot of it was about sharing people's comments and stuff. And I think if we look at Pinterest, and you mentioned YouTube, you think about SlideShare, you think about Instagram. I think the next wave is everything is about the visual aspect of it. So, two-part question. I'll just open it up to the other panelists if anybody asks about how are you sort of creating and pulling those sort of new visual-oriented assets together across the organization? A, and then B, how are you using email to either share those or to capture those from the end customer and stuff?
You start this time.
Sure. So I had mentioned wearing occasions previously. So even as an employee of Crocs, I see a new silhouette and think to myself, how am I ever going to wear that shoe? So our customers go through the exact same thing. So Pinterest is a wonderful platform, and Instagram is the same, to share collaboratively with our customers and internal teams on how to wear different types of shoes for different wearing occasions. So we do everything around campaigns. We're just not mature enough to have an everlasting brand. But it's always campaigns. And so we did a couple of social visual campaigns this past year, one being social fan favorite, so pulling images from Pinterest and First Bank. And then we also did staff styles, and that's originated from email. So we developed content, or email content, and we formatted it for the web. So we also used it on Pinterest as well. And I know a couple of other brands as well that are based in Colorado, like a sports brand that's doing a sweepstakes currently on Pinterest. And they're able to use visuals from their website, so it's not really developing any new content by any means, but it's storytelling, right? And you're acquiring new customers and sharing that content through your network.
Anybody else?
Yeah, sure. For being on the email channel, we actually drive our own creative. We actually create it ourselves. We're not actually pulling it from, PR or brand or the social team. We're actually creating our own infographics with our own data. And it's a fairly robust and drawn out process where we're plugged in fairly significantly with legal and with our brand teams. And it takes some wild turns in a lot of cases because you have a theme, you have an idea you want to work from, but the data tells you a different story, and so you have to be fairly agile with that information and with that data to come up with an interesting story. It's a complex process. I don't think everyone has access to that information and that data in order to make a story within their own channels. But it's something that we've started testing and trying to do to break through in the inbox with users. Because to your point, a lot of cases, emails are very much text heavy. A lot of cases, retailers have more of a visual story to tell because they're getting the photos and they have the product shots and whatnot. In our case, we're having to develop that from scratch.
Chris, did you want to add anything? Or?
Just the whole idea of repurposing content I love. And having the ability to have a central view of all of the content in an organization as we struggle to create content for email. And I think that Evan alluded to this a little bit this morning, but being able to look out at content that you've already promoted out through these social channels, or, as I've probably said like a broken record, I'm a huge fan of search for measurement. So when you're sitting there in your whatever frequency you're sending your email thinking, what am I going to send? If you're able to look at all of your content and say, okay, this resonates with this persona, this is going to go into this email. The idea of everybody creating their own content, I think, is a little bit broken nowadays. That wasn't really a shot. I didn't mean it that way. But the fact is, there are all these silos. When we started in ExactTarget, and a lot of you guys have been around for a while, remember calling on a marketing department and talking about email, and they'd be like, what? Is that the internet? Yeah, you need to talk to Bob over here. Bob runs the phone system and does all our online marketing, because he's the tech guy, right? And now we're coming into these silos that the people don't talk to each other anymore in these organizations. They don't know what's going on, and everyone's independently creating content. And the customer doesn't deal with us that way, right? The customer's like a pinball. They're banging all over the place, and we need to make sure we've got consistently relevant content across every channel they might hit.
I know we're almost out of time. Do I have time for one more question, or
Sure.
you want to open it up to questions?
Yeah. One more is great.
Okay. This went by fast. I had several more things I wanted to get at, but Andrea, why don't you just talk about what we briefly chatted about before we got on stage, which is sort of the dream of all of this, which is social CM. I know Crocs is starting to think about it, so maybe in 60 seconds or 180 seconds, if you could talk about what you guys are doing, think about doing, the failures, whatever.
Yeah, sure. So for the past 2 years, we've been implementing a CRM system. And the CRM system that we do have in place is really rigid, so it's very transactional based, and that's not our vision. Obviously, it's all behavioral. customer engagement. And so we're going through the steps of modifying what the CRM currently looks like to accept social CRM as well. We have again, putting the customer in the center of our wheelhouse, understanding that they interact with our brand on various and disparate platforms. But we need to take all of that data and distill it down into different types of personas so then we can actually have a relationship with our customers as opposed to just speaking to them. So we're going through the steps of putting together our roadmap and our architecture for these various platform integrations. But our ideal would be to have a 360-degree view of the customer, but have that degree of that view of the customer, understanding that we're not going to be out from the gate have 100 different types of programs. We're going to have a handful of various programs that we're going to place our attention to and our resources towards. So that's on the roadmap. But ideally, I think any brand needs to have a relationship with their customers. And I think that's definitely the first step in terms of social.
Great, thank you. Morgan, do we want to see if there are any questions?
Yes.
Or
We got one right here in the front. There we go.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Thomas from Edmunds.com, and was just wondering, the different panelists, what social media marketing platform are you using to collect your social data from all the different platforms, and how are you using that data in your email marketing efforts?
So for our listening tool, we use Radian6 currently, and we're evaluating various types of social CRM platforms currently. Much of the content that we pull is very manual. Through Pinterest, I know that there's pay, like Pinfluencer, but for several of our campaigns, we used, I think, a bookmark something another. But it just downloads a CSV file, so it tells you the various types of images that are being pinned. But it's still very, very manual for us.
anybody else?
No,
Chris?
selfishly, we use Compendium, which isn't really a listening platform per se. I mean, we're integrated to the listening platforms, but we think about content as data. At the end of the day, I want to deliver the right piece of content to the right person through the right channel at the right time. And so that's our most important social interaction, is how do we distribute content across a social channel, and how do we acquire content from a social channel that we may be able to distribute through an email channel or a search channel or a different social channel.
For listening, we use a combination of Radian6, which is now part of Salesforce.com, for English-speaking countries. For some of the other countries, we use their local vendor because Radian6 is not all language capable. Sprinkler is another tool we use. I don't know if they're here or not, but there's a lot of, we try not to get misled by the availability of lots of tools. Try to figure out what the problem is we're trying to solve. But I do want to go back to the social CRM if we have just one minute. I think the value of social in social CRM is really, probably twofold or threefold. It's the real timeness. It's also the social intelligence. Those two are kind of linked. We do a lot of social listening. We have a social listening center, both in the U.S., which tracks all the English-speaking sites, also in Europe. And in the case of China, we do it in the less frequent format. We do it bi-monthly. But the social listening offers so much more than the traditional brand tracker, because it's real time. If you spot a competitive move from your social listening effort, you can immediately use, I guess in one of the keynotes, it was a great example, right? IHG, that example, you know your competitor is doing something and you can move very quickly thanks to the social listening capability. So I think that's part of the value of social in social CRM, right? At the end of the day, it's still about customer relations and managing that, but social just adds more real-timeness and more intelligence to it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, panel.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. And this conversation, now we move in.